Small child quiet in bed would wake up shortly. Small child relaxed in bed. There was some blood where his head rested. He sensed the blood and woke up in a pool of it. "Mommy!" he screamed. Blood was all over his bed, soaked through the sheets, stained through the cloth which was stuck to the child's pajamas. "Mommy!" he screamed again. He got up and blood trickled down his arms, underneath his pajamas, down his legs, on the floor, soaking the cotton-thin pajamas. Blood spurt through his spores. His blood was covered with blood on his hands, smearing away blood, causing more blood to be spread. "Mommy!" he screamed again. Blood filling his mouth as he screamed, creating blood bubbles and some coughing up of blood which ran down his chin. He cupped his hands and caught the blood in goblets as it overflowed upon the floor. Lots of blood on the floor, so thick, blood thick, could be used for finger painting. What do you want?" Small child's mother slid upon the scene, sliding upon the blood on the floor. She said, "Whoa!" She looked down. "Look!" Small child screamed. "What?" Look at me!" Small child cried. What's wrong?" Mother screamed at child. "I'm bleeding." "Okay, now I see." "Huh? It'll go away." "What?" "Stop shouting. I said it'll go away." "Blood?" "Yes." The mother saw the blood on the floor glistening. It was fresh, and she sidestepped it and came to the small child. She hugged the child. Small child calmed down suddenly as mother began to soothe him. Luscious, cooing words sprouted from the mother. Nice big flesh she possessed as she rubbed him, and he calmed down further and further. She put arms around small child, smiled, looked, and then kissed. He responded, accepted blood as mother went away. Small child shook. He was not used to all the blood all over his body, sweating from his pores. Red, meaty sweat soaking him, causing him to shiver as the hot blood met with the outside air. Blood filled his shoes and socks as he put them on. He was completely wet with blood. His hair turned from blonde to red because there was so much blood coming from his head. Blood trickled from behind his ears and ran inside of them. He jumped up and down to knock the blood out of his ears. Blood ran down his face. Tears turned to blood. Blood soaked through his new flannel shirt. He had to go to school with blood-soaked clothes. He went down to the kitchen where father was eating the bread. "What's the matter?" he asked a bloody boy. "Nothing. Mommy says I have blood and that'll go away." Blood? Well, I want you to check that out with someone today." "Huh? It's not good to bleed all over the place." "I don't know what happened. My blood, it had blood, and the bloody boy suddenly swallowed blood." "What?" The bloody boy waved his hands, pointing to his throat. "Don't worry anyway," father yawned. "Sometimes this happens to small children." The newspaper was opened while the coffee was swallowed. Father ate the bread. Then he took some keys and kissed his child upon his small bloody head, getting blood on his brow. "Yuck," he said. Bloody boy's father picked up the New York Times and headed upstairs towards the room where mommy cleaned up the blood left behind by the small bloody child. "What's the matter with him?" "I don't know. He woke up bleeding," he said. "How does that happen, I wonder?" "I don't know. Yeah, anyway, make sure when you leave today you move the carbine out of the driveway so the machine goes on." "Did Barry call?" Yes, all you got was a hum from, so can you do that? Okay. They kissed, then hugged, and picked up the blood left behind from the small child, who was now bleeding in the kitchen, cleaning up the crumbs from his own bread and the blood bread of his own little blood-stained hands upon the refrigerator. Father came back downstairs. "Have a good day," he said to the child. "I'm scared," the blood boy said. "Can I take a bath first?" "What? In your blood?" Father smiled a little at him. "Don't worry, it'll go away soon." "Please, Daddy, please help me." Blood filled the boy's mouth and the pouring began from the creases of his mouth. "Don't worry," the father said, kissing the child on the head, and blood, of course, stained father's own head. Blood is natural. It's nature's way of saying that you'll die. It's nature's way of saying, it's nature's way of saying, it's nature's way of saying, it's nature's way of saying. "I'm bleeding," the small child said, discovering that his blood was real and his father was clear. It's nature's way of saying, it's nature's way of saying, it's nature's way of saying, it's nature's way of saying. Child got blood on father. Father grabbed towel from the towel rack and wiped off the blood upon his stained white face. Bloody child stepped on the carpet. Mother saw the bloody boy and said in a voice pointing to him, young man, isn't it about time you got off to school?" "I know," small child said. Bleeding down the street, cars slowed down and pedestrians slowed their feet to see the bloody child dripping blood between the sidewalk cracks, filling the small puddles with blood rather than water, blood collecting in the crotch of his pants, making a big red stain which crawled and soaked down the boy's legs. His nice flannel shirt was soaked red, and the blood collected in the places where the shirt was tucked in, so it dripped there and got full. He waited for the bus with other little people. "You're bleeding," they said, looking at him universally. "I know, it's only temporary." The bloody boy cried blood which dripped on his notebook and the books with words he did not read. Blood made red streaks on the ground, and he heard the blood dribble on the sidewalk, sounding like the burning of ants under a magnifying glass. Cars slowed down to drop off other children, and the first thing they saw was the blood-soaked boy bleeding. "Can I touch it?" asked one small child. "Sure, I don't know, I don't care," small child said, through blood filling his mouth. One small child touched other bloody child, and the one small child rubbed his blood between his fingers, looked at it, and then tried to wipe it back on the blood boy. Bus came and all the children got on. Bloody one last because he was embarrassed, completely soaked with blood, leaving bloody footprints up the bus steps because his shoes were sopping wet with blood. Bus driver exclaimed, "You alright, son?" "Yeah, I'm okay," bloody boy shivered. Blood boy was given a seat of his own, and all the children moved 3 seats away from him, and blood boy sat alone, crying loads of blood all over the floor, and it got full and it gushed towards the front, soaking the other children's feet. And when the bus got to school, all the children left bloody footprints behind, and the bus driver got a mop from the janitor and said that his bus was filled with blood because a little boy was bleeding profusely, and they agreed that he was sick or something and that he should have stayed at home. But home was filled with blood. Meantime, Mother was still mopping the kitchen floor, missing the blood that stuck under the sticky, bloody refrigerator and the blood prints on the toaster and TV, on the door that led to her room, and little bloody fingerprints on the window and those bloody marks on the bathroom mirror. In class, the small child was quietly bleeding in the back row and created a blood smell of rotten flesh. Blood kept drooling from from his eyeballs, and his desk was completely messy with blood. And every time he opened his mouth, there was blood coming from his gums and nose. Blood flowed from under his arms, and he was so soaked with blood that he had to squeeze his shirt like a sponge or something, and the blood would splatter and drip on the floor, and a teacher could tell that the bloody boy was not listening. Why did you leave? The teacher suggested. Go see the nurse or something, get yourself fixed up. To bleed all over the place is just inappropriate. I understand, the small child said, picking up his blood-stained books and making squishy sounds in his blood-filled shoes as though he was under a river of blood, which now was not far from the truth. His hair was silky and shiny from the red blood, and his nose poured blood down him because he let it pour so he would not swallow the tremendous load of blood running from his loins to his mouth to his head. He cried harder now, and the blood pulsated to his cheeks, making them bloodier, for the bloody-soaked boy thought he was going to die, and thus more blood arose from his small form, making him appear like the bloody organs inside somebody as he bled towards the nurse's office. "Can I help you, young man?" asked the receptionist as the bloody boy came in. "Yes, I'm bleeding. I need some help." "Okay, I'll tell the nurse. Why don't you go to the bathroom and get cleaned up?" The boy went to the bathroom to get paper towels and then soaked them with water to try to wipe all the blood off himself and soak it out of his clothes. When he tried to go pee-pee, blood came out and filled the entire potty, overflowing on the floor, and he finally stopped when he flushed, but then the potty got stopped up with blood and the wet towels, and the bloody boy was wrenching up blood in the sink, and it stayed there like tomato sauce, and the child left the bathroom quickly and went to the vinyl couch to sit and wait for the nurse. "Okay, you're all set." The receptionist smiled and pointed to the room. The bloody boy got up and left a small pool of blood where he was sitting, and the receptionist suddenly smelled something sour. It was blood. She went to the red bathroom and saw the mess, got paper towels so she could clean the blood, wiped it around the vinyl couch, but didn't get the blood that traveled down the cracks of the cushions, still sticky, but drying. In the nurse's office, the nurse said, "Why don't you take off your clothes so we can see what's going on with you?" "Okay." The small child obeyed and shed his clothes, but had trouble as he tried to get the icky and wet blood-soaked shirt off his torso. It got caught around his neck, but he increased the pressure and pulled the bloody shirt and flopped it on the floor. Splat. He struggled with his pants, socks, shoes, which were stuck to his body by the blood, and when his clothes were all off, he bled upon the nurse's table, lined with the white paper, soaking the paper and ripping it as he moved. The nurse put an ear thing inside his ear and told him to look at the light when she checked his bleeding eyeballs. Blood got all over the nurse, and she went to wash up while saying to the bloody boy, "You're bleeding, that's for sure. I think it's best you go home." The nurse called the receptionist, getting blood on the phone, who called the principal, getting coffee on her phone, who called the father, getting candy on his phone. Then the mother, who had blood on her hands, got it on the phone, and everybody knew who was bleeding, and that the bloody boy should bleed at home. Blood burst through the doors underneath the nurse's office. So profusely did the blood pour from the small child's body, running like a river around the floors of the school, splashing in waves against the doors to the classrooms. The teachers saw blood gushing under their doors and pointed to it, and the children saw blood flowing down the hallways, and they kicked at it. But the bloody boy soon left the school, and it soon encrusted. bloody boy's bloody clothes were soon drenched with blood as he sat on the steps waiting for his father. Blood regularly flowed out of him, running down the steps and over to where the seesaw was, soaking the brief lawn, then the street. A car came driving over the red, wet street, splashing blood on the bloody boy who was waiting for that car which belonged to his father. Come in, oh God, what's going on with you today? Father asked as he opened the car door for his son. I'm bleeding. I can see that, but why? I don't know why. Well, we'll take you home. As Father drove, the car gradually filled up with blood, and Father got slightly perturbed because the blood was getting on him and his bag, which had the gym clothes in it. So he simply moved the stuff to the back seat while he drove so they wouldn't get so bloody wet. The accelerator pedal was getting slippery under Father's foot, and the car was moving like a decapitated bunny. Soon Father had to put on the window wipers, but that only smeared the blood all over the windows. I wish you wouldn't bleed so much, Father mentioned. I'm sorry. Well, sorry isn't going to help any, is it? He said and smiled a little as he patted his son's back but shoved him slightly, causing him to hit the side of the car, making a blood-soaked splashing sound. Soon they slid home and both got out of the red, sopping car. In the house, Mother held a red mop and the red rubber gloves she had taken off so she could open the door. Cleaning agents were scattered about, rough abrasive fluids on top of every table. Bring him upstairs, she began. I just finished cleaning down here. She knew about his bleeding condition and tried not to show it. Father picked up on this and asked, "What's the matter?" The boy dripped blood as he climbed lethargically up the stairs, for lack of blood was making him tired, and the blood ran down, pouring down the staircase behind him as though a blood fire hydrant from above was freed, splashing harder down the stairs, spraying the wall with the onrush of red fluid. Red dots ran on the wall, and the small child was soaked, and he tired quickly because he was losing lots of blood, so tired that he could not stay alive, so he went straight to bed and bled. Was he like this at school? Father asked. The boy was bleeding profusely. His head fell straight and blood collected in his throat gradually, and then he drowned, but blood continued to overflow and began filling up his room. So the items started to float on the surface of the blood, and the heavy objects fell to the bottom slowly because blood was thick and gooey, and some items, like the pictures of people and things that he read, hung in the middle of the blood-filled room. The blood finally shoved open his door and poured leisurely down the stairs, shoving display items, knickknacks, and paintings from their places. And Mother and Father saw the blood coming, and they ran out of the house. They stood on the lawn and watched their entire house fill with blood, gushing from the windows, taking with it the furniture and photographs and blood and books no longer readable. The blood sprayed through cracks that Father thought he filled in with insulation. Blood shot out of the chimney and unclogged the corpse of Santa Claus, who had been stuck in there since last year. Blood flooded the basement, eventually breaking the basement walls, rose through the ground and began soaking it, rising further until Father and Mother saw bloody pools form on their kindly tended lawn. They ran to the street now because the grass beneath them was getting soft and mushy with red, thick fluid. Some parts of the lawn collapsed in because of the blood, and then the blood filled in the holes. And there was an increasing level of blood rising up the legs of mother and father, and it was cold, not warm like they'd supposed. "We have to get out of here," Father said. "But what about Chris? If we don't get out, we'll drown." "But what if Chris is dead?" Mother screamed. "What? We have to get Chris out." "We can't." "What?" "Tell me how," Father said, smiling a little, and pointed to the veins in his wrist. As he sat on the steps waiting for his father, blood regularly flowed out of him, running down the steps and over to where the seesaw was, soaking the brief lawn, then the street. A car came driving over the red, wet street, splashing blood on the bloody boy, who was that of Father's car. Come in, oh God, what's going on with you today?" he asked as he opened the door for his son. "I'm bleeding." "I can see that, but why?" "I don't know why." "Well, we'll take you home." As the father drove, the car gradually filled up with blood, and Father got perturbed because the blood was getting on him and his bag, which had the gym clothes in it. So he simply moved the stuff to the back seat while he drove so they wouldn't get so bloody wet. The accelerator pedal was getting slippery under Father's foot, and the car was moving like a decapitated bunny. Soon Father had to put the window wipers on, but that only smeared the blood all over the windows. "I wish you wouldn't bleed so much," Father mentioned disappointedly. "I'm sorry." "Well, sorry